So Shelby, thank you for driving all the way down here from Vernon. Usually we've got people on the show who are directly connected to Kelowna. You are, in a sense, your parents are from here.
Yeah. My mom is from here. My mom grew up here, and I have a long lineage of family from here. My great-grandmother, who passed away maybe, it's going to be coming up on 10 years or so. She was from here and was passionate about Kelowna. It's in my blood.
Right.
And so really I look at myself more of an Okanagan resident,
right,
with ties everywhere. My dad grew up more on the Salmon Arm side. So there's Okanagan-wide connections all the way up to Vernon, and I just happened to be born and raised in Vernon, but Kelowna is still in that same lexicon of influence, right? Because it's, I still have sold homes here and whatnot, so it's, I come down here for date nights, things like that. Right. It's still in the culture, but just in a little more quiet side of it. So
yeah, for sure. And I've done deals up in Vernon and Lake Country. I'm sure we both dealt in Lake Country.
Yeah.
We're both realtors. And we both have a podcast, so that's why I wanted to get you on the show.
It's interesting, man, for sure. It's cool seeing another realtor do a podcast because it's an awesome platform.
Yeah,
so
I think I found you by accident on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? I saw that you were doing a podcast.
Yeah, that's how I found you as well. So same thing. Yeah, it's awesome, man.
Very cool. So tell us, how is real estate in Vernon right now? What's your sense of the market?
It's balancing out for sure. I don't see the same reduction in influence as it has in Kelowna. Kelowna has definitely taken a little bit of a dive price-wise and sales-wise, whereas our prices are remaining high, except for the sales are coming down. So I don't know if that's just an effect that's coming later. Like perhaps it's going to balance out a little bit quicker, right? Or a little bit more long-term. I do see Kelowna having an influence on Vernon. I notice even a lot more Kelowna realtors doing business in Vernon. I think that's because if you get someone from the coast or someone from Calgary and they come in and they're, okay, we've got $500,000 to play with, you can get a lot more in Vernon than you can in Kelowna nowadays because, the last 3 years, you guys were gaining at, more like 18 to 22% in any given market. We were more along the 10 to 12%, so the gains just weren't nearly as high.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it's kind of a complex thing, but I think generally speaking, if sales decline, prices will start to decline, usually. Yeah. Hopefully, this is a pause. To me, it kind of feels like a pause more than a crash, like we kind of had in 2008. And I say that because the restaurants, the bars I go to, the shopping mall, everything seems quite busy. We had a pretty good tourist season, not the best, but a pretty solid.
I think the smoke kind of came
the smoke
into
put a damper on
there.
it. Yeah. And I think the province in general is a little bit slow, but it didn't feel like 2008 here, where it was kind of like a ghost town. The real estate market just kind of stopped in Kelowna after 2008. I wasn't here,
right.
But realtors, it's kind of legend. Everybody talks about 2008 and what happened. I came in 2011, and it was still quite slow.
Right.
We had new construction projects that were finished in 2007, 2008. It still had units for sale right up until 2013, until they finally got rid of that excess inventory.
Yeah, there was a lot of inventory left over in that market, and that's the thing. We don't know if we're going to have something, maybe it'll be similar to 07, 08, 09, but it's going to happen in 3 years instead of a year and a half. Like we don't really know where that sits, but I do love how the government is helping to try and protect people from that. I love the fact that we have to qualify at 2% higher than what our interest rate is.
Yeah.
And that's all I tell consumers. I get a lot of frustrated first-time buyers, especially because I'm a young realtor, so naturally a lot of my databases are people that I went to high school with or people that I had connections with. And I find, they go, we can afford so much more, but the bank won't give us the money for it. It's like they're just trying to protect you.
Right.
Like this is a protection mechanism, and it's generalized to the entire market. So even though you're confident that your job is not going to scale down, the pipe fitter in Alberta working up north and coming back to Kelowna or Vernon, they don't have that same guarantee. And so I think it's sort of a broad spectrum way to kind of go, okay, we learned a lesson, And how do we mitigate that even further? You're never going to stop market corrections, but you can mitigate them to the point where it's not so volatile.
For sure. And I think it is a good thing for people, because people tend to say, what is the maximum I can afford? And it's kind of the same mindset as maxing out your credit card. Like, even if you can do it, it may not make sense to do it. You know, unless you're 100% positive your income is going to keep rising continuously forever, ever. You know, sometimes things are slow. Sometimes in business, many people work for themselves. Things are a little bit slow. So why have a payment that's going to cause you stress? You know, if it's a lower payment and you can be content, then life's just easier, less stressful when things are a bit slow, right?
Well, and that's just it. We have a lifestyle. It's the Okanagan lifestyle, you know, and do you really want to max out your payment? Like, yeah, the bank protects you on the front that they only let you borrow up to, you know, maximum 40 or 42% of what your gross income is, but that's still a lot of your income. Like, do you want to be able to go skiing in the summer? Do you want to be able to go wine touring a few times? Do you want to be able to take your gal on a date once a week? You know, those things cost money, and that's part of our lifestyle, and I think that's the reason why people live here. They trade that apartment or condo lifestyle or tiny house in Vancouver, and they find, okay, well, you know, I can upsize, but I can also have a life, and there's so much more I can do here.
Exactly.
And that's so incredible.
True. So true. So we've faced a bunch of new rules and also some taxes or potential taxes that they're threatening to impose.
Yeah, you guys have got the speculation tax coming up, right? So
yes. And in my experience, uncertainty is almost as bad as the medicine that they're trying to give us. Investors in particular are kind of hesitating. They're like, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to wait, because if the market collapses, maybe there's better prices in the future. But it's just the uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. It hasn't passed yet, the speculation tax. But what do you think about it? Do you think it's having an effect on the BC real estate market?
It's tough to say, because it's coming from the perspective of how's a developer going to feel, right? How is that going to impact it? I am a believer that you do have to sometimes put in measures to kind of protect things outside of your professional influence. So we hold sales license and we help people buy homes. I'm sure you get it a lot too. I get friends of mine, hey, can you help me find a rental? And it's like, I can do my best, you know, maybe direct you to the RE/MAX commercial site in Vernon or Kelowna, but I can't really help you. But I do think there is a responsibility as an industry to kind of make sure that we do have a healthy rental market too. So I think inherently what they're trying to do, it's good in theory. Like I understand that if you're leaving something open for, you know, it's empty for 6 months, there's a tax, or you know, those kind of measures that were already placed in Vancouver. In theory, those things work. The problem is then developers get scared off to the point where they halt developments. And is that really what's going to go on? And are people gonna that are in Alberta and have a house here? Their perspective is, I can afford this home, and I'm a Canadian citizen. Why the hell are you allowed to tax me?
Right.
Like, why? That doesn't make any sense, and I understand that. So I sort of see it from both perspectives. I think it's good in theory. I just think it has untold consequences on the other side that is really, really hard to find that balance. So honestly, I am more on the side of, I think it is going to scare away development and whatnot, but I'm not sure. The developers want to make money too. I really truly believe if you're a true entrepreneur and you have a business spirit, you're going to create business regardless of the market. We can't blame government regulations. We have to make our influence and help people in our own little way, right? So that's I try and take the step back. Like, okay, even if this is happening, how do I adjust to it?
Exactly. So I've done quite a few deals in Lake Country recently.
Okay.
And that's just outside of the zone where it's proposed. I guess my biggest problem with it is they seem to single out the 5 most prosperous cities in the province.
Yeah.
And it's kind of counterintuitive. Like we had a rental shortage, so it was pretty bad here in Kelowna. but I deal with a lot of small investors, guys that own one house, two houses, three houses, and this is turning them off.
Yeah, so, absolutely. How can it not, right?
Right. So,
they're looking at their profit margin. They're looking at their investments. It's fair.
Yeah, but they might buy something in Lake Country now for an investment, and they put a tenant there. So it's kind of, in a way, it's hurting the Kelowna rental market as well. But
that's the inverse side that you don't hear about, right?
Right.
You got to look at the issue from the full scope of the argument. It's tough that way. And that's the thing. You're right. Why is Kelowna and West Kelowna singled out? There are so many people that are from Alberta, or they're even from the coast, that have a house up here. And that's not central to Kelowna and West Kelowna. That is Okanagan wide.
Right.
I tend to find older folks tend to go more towards Penticton, Osoyoos, those areas.
Yeah.
And then the young people, of course, they love to be here. But you're singling out one corner of a really big market, and so is that unfair? I do think so. On some level, it is.
The speculation tax, I mean, I just think it's a little strange to have a provincial mandate that only affects five cities. Kelowna, West Kelowna, then Victoria and Vancouver.
Right.
A little strange. If you want to stop speculation and stop having a bunch of empty homes and condos, it should be province-wide.
Why is it centered on that? The Kelowna market is highly reliant on the Vernon market and vice versa. They feed off each other, and they're deeply interconnected, even if we choose to say that they're not. It's only 40 minutes away, and there's tons of realtors doing business there. And I tend to focus my business in Vernon because I want to make that a little more efficient. Obviously, doing showings on a Thursday evening in Kelowna is not the most efficient for me because it takes an extra hour and a half out of my day.
Right.
But I will do it for close friends and family.
For sure.
I would trust myself more than I would someone else. So why wouldn't I help someone close to me? But you're right. There is a sense of unfairness there. Why is it blanketed or why is it not blanketed on the whole province? Why is it central to Kelowna? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a little strange. So you get past the airport and you're in Winfield Lake Country.
Yeah.
And so the rule doesn't apply. It's kind of an arbitrary thing. But anyways, we as realtors all across British Columbia have a bunch of new rules in place. Maybe you could give us your take on it. What do the new rules mean for us and for consumers, our clients?
Right. So there was the new rules on, just to recap for any listeners that maybe don't know these rules. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of listeners that are not in the real estate industry. So we had limited dual agency ban, which is the ability to represent a buyer and a seller at the same time. Mm-hmm. The thing I think the public needs to realize is that we were allowed to do that, but there were strict ways of us needing to do it properly. And most of us, me included, there was certain situations where I would not get into that.
Right.
That it was never in the client's best interest. And there's no way that I could, just by making sure that confidentiality is in place for both clients, that I could actually act impartially.
Right.
And so I think there is some judgment there, and I think the government was trying to prevent that moral dilemma, and because some people's moral compass is questionable at times. That's the society that we live in.
Yeah.
So again, it's in theory, I agree with it. I love protections for the consumers. That's deeply important to me. Part of my vision in real estate in general is to change the industry. I don't like how salesmanship trumps consultancy. Mm-hmm. I don't like bragging about your sales over bragging about your clients. I don't agree with all of these things that I find just give realtors kind of a tarnished reputation.
Yes.
We are likened to car salesmen sometimes, and that drives me crazy.
Right.
Because my care truly is my client. And so when I look at a regulation, I go, okay, well, what is the goal? What impact did it have? And what shortfalls did it have? And for me, the biggest shortfall is that it essentially just transferred liability to other areas. So I have seller A and seller B, or buyer A and seller A. And they come to me, both have been clients for approximately 5 years, and they come and maybe they both know each other and they trust me to be able to act impartially, and they have some experience. So they don't need me to help come up with a price. You get first-time buyers and they're like, how do we approach this multiple offer? How do we do this? Then that's a different story. But clients that are already educated, they already know, and they're putting their trust in you to make sure that you do maintain confidentiality, because we owe that regardless of limited dual agency regulations or not.
Right.
So those can go great to the point where both consumers will come back, and even if someone were to ask, hey, was that good? You were in limited dual agency. Was that? It's like, yeah, we trust our agent. He acted impartially. He didn't tell me what the other guy's negotiation position was, and vice versa. But now it's basically creating issues in other areas that I find, and that's outside of the structures with teams and things like that. Because in the industry, of course, it was like an earthquake, especially to team structures. They're going, how the heck do we do this? A team leader sends a lead to a team member, and you take out a client that you've never met before, and you build a good rapport, maybe 10 minutes in a little bit about yourself, 20 minutes through the house, and then they're interested, and then you go, I actually can't represent you. And it's a very awkward conversation to have, and the consumer gets confused. Where it really showed me that there was a gap in how it was implemented was less than a week after. So I used to be affiliated with a team. I'm now on my own, but that was about a month ago. So June, I think it was around June 18th, 19th, June 18th or 19th, like right after the rules had passed. We get a brand new listing on our team, and it's a hot listing, and there's going to be multiple offers. There's 30 showings in a few days. Wow. They've set the date for when the multiples are going to be there.
I miss those days.
I know, right? So
they'll come back.
So my clients that I've been working with for 4 months, they're relocating from Vancouver, and I've explained to them the rules. I gave them the heads up. Hey, this could happen. Sure enough, I come into it. It's like, hey guys, and they indicated that they wanted to write an offer. Shoot, I can't actually do this deal for you as much as I want to. So even though I know nothing about Chris Holm was my team leader, I knew nothing about Chris's client. I knew nothing about them. I didn't work with them. But because I'm affiliated with a team, the law sees me as the same person as Chris.
Yeah.
And so now I have to go find another agent. And the only agent at the time that I could even find to write the offer, she told me straight up that she couldn't reciprocate it. She had formed an alliance with somebody else to refer business to. But for me, I'm looking after my client. So at that point, I didn't care if I got business back. I just wanted to make sure that my client was in the best hands possible. So they go and they write an offer with another realtor associate of mine, and that's great. Everything went fine. They didn't get the offer, but they said she was very professional. They felt well protected. Okay, that's great. Whatever, we'll move on. But now that realtor has all of my clients' confidential information.
Yeah.
And so this realtor that I referred them to is not, she's not a slow realtor. She's a very busy realtor. So there's a fair chance that the next listing that they want to write an offer on is her clients.
Yeah.
And so now she knows my clients' confidential information, or maybe their negotiation position, what they can afford, what they can't afford.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, okay, well now does this realtor have to give up her listing? And now how do I handle that? Where do I lie there? So I feel like we had a responsibility to maintain confidentiality, even in limited dual. And that led to questionable results in especially Vancouver.
Yeah. Vancouver.
But now it shifts it to another area where we've just helped a client to help out another agent, but we still owe them confidentiality. So for me, there's a little bit of a gap in reasoning there, and just a basic thing that really you can only do when you are in the industry and you recognize these situations and you go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't have even fathomed that in my own head unless I was a realtor actively working.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like that. I'm sure you've run into maybe similar situations. Like, what is your experience with it?
So I did quite a few double enders over the past several years. And to me, like, I always try to be, completely ethical. And I understand the rules, so confidentiality and everything. I'll give you an example. The last one I did, which was a couple months before the new rules went into effect, was a mobile home.
Okay.
And I was representing the seller. I helped him 3 times. So I helped him buy that place. I helped them sell it. last summer, and I ran little ads on Castanet and so forth. I found that for lower priced units, I get a better response on ads, classified ads. Consumers will often call me directly and say, tell me about it.
Right.
And now it's a real problem. But this guy called me and he said he wanted to know about it. He's not working with a realtor. So when we started to get into it, I explained to him my loyalty is to the seller, but I have to treat you fairly. And I didn't do it to dual agency. I just put him in the customer role.
Right.
But I still gave him some advice. For example, I said, you probably want to get a home inspection. Now, to me, that helps both parties. It legitimately helps both parties because you don't want a buyer coming back to your seller saying, you didn't tell me about this. And yeah, you made a disclosure, but you weren't honest. Or something like that. So it's really for the seller's protection and the buyer's protection to get an inspection. So I'm not hurting my seller by telling the buyer, listen, you should get an inspection. Or let me talk to your mortgage broker and see how much time he needs to get your approval. And we'll put that date in there for your subject removal. Right? I'm giving him advice like that, but nothing that I'm telling him is hurting my seller. In fact, it's helping my seller because he's getting a deal that's actually going to go through.
Exactly.
So, to me, it's a little bit frustrating. And also, I lived in an offshore tax haven. I lived in the Cayman Islands for 11 years.
Right, okay.
And I remember every couple of years, the G7 and the G8 would get together and they would say, we're cracking down on tax evasion. And what would happen was a bunch of new rules would be passed and all the law firms and accounting firms in the Cayman Islands would expand because we had way more paperwork to deal with. Now, if you want to open a bank account, you've got about 30, 40 pages of paperwork, whereas it used to be 2 or 3 pages. Nothing has changed. Tax evasion still happens, right? It's just more paperwork. So in British Columbia, if someone wanted to do something corrupt, they could call another agent who is also corrupt and just say, listen, here's what we're going to do. And you do the paperwork. Paperwork does not prevent bad people from doing bad things.
No, it's supposed to.
Right.
It really is. Like, they're trying to educate the consumer, and you're almost arming them with enough information that even they can identify when they're in a conflict or when their agent is in a conflict, right? But yeah, that's true. The thing, the corrupt attitudes and the lack of morality, there's no amount of regulation that gets rid of that, in my opinion. But you can mitigate it as much as possible. And that's why I don't necessarily disagree with it on a fundamental level. I just disagree with how quickly it was pushed through and how little thought was put into it on the practical side. Because it makes it tough for consumers to understand too, and that's where I base all my opinions of, okay, well, what does this do to the consumer? Like, how is the consumer going to feel going out with an agent they've never met? You build a good rapport with them and you let them through the house, and then all of a sudden they tell you that they can't actually represent you and you're being passed off to another agent. So you're going from team leader to team member to a completely different agent who, and all three of them could have captured some information about what price range you're in. Maybe they were looking at $700,000 houses in that database. And then all of a sudden, you're referring them to another agent for a property that's worth $500,000. So, team leader is going, if he's immoral, goes, well, he was looking at $700,000 houses, so we're pretty darn sure he can afford more. Well, now you've just hurt their negotiation position. So I think there's always going to be holes, and I really think it's up to personal responsibility, which is another mixed bag because, like I said, moral compasses vary from person to person. But I think there's a reason why we're licensed. There's a reason why we have such strict regulations, and I do agree with the increases in fines. I look through a lot of those errors and omissions cases, and it's amazing how much people could get away with and only have like a $5,000 fine and a slap on the wrist. They have to do some continuing education, and that's just... It's insanity. Like, they made more off the transaction that they closed, sometimes tenfold, than the actual fine. And so I agree with the fines increasing. It can be scary because liability is tough that way. Sometimes we can put ourselves into situations where we're not completely obeying the rules, but it was unintentional. Like, there's so many little paperwork things that you can be fined for now that we do have to up our game, but I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
I really do. I want things that increase the trust in the public. I want people to use a realtor when they buy a house. It scares the crap out of me when people don't.
Yeah.
And especially if they're a first-time buyer, there's just steps that you need to take. It's not like a realtor is God, but they do quarterback your transaction. Good ones are really good at telling you where you need to go to make sure that information is there. And I just don't want to see a situation where people don't trust realtors to the point where they're thinking that, oh, well, my dad has sold 5 properties, so he knows what's best, and he thinks this is worth this much. It's just, it can get to be insane.
Yeah.
So totally. I'm sure you're aware of those nuances.
I think it's the same as the legal profession. It's very complex, and you can go into a lawsuit without a lawyer, but it's a mistake.
Yeah.
It's almost always a mistake because there's no way you know how to navigate the system and all the things that you got to watch out for, like someone with specialized training does. So, yeah, it is what it is. We've got we're killing a lot of trees, but it is what it is. And I do agree with you. I think enforcement is really important. Anybody that is intentionally or even accidentally giving us a bad reputation needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Because it hurts us all when that happens. So totally agree with you. I want to talk to you a little bit about podcasting.
Absolutely.
We connected on Instagram, I think almost at the exact same time, noticed that each other had a podcast. So tell us about your podcast in Vernon, and then I want to ask you a little bit about the process and how you got into it. But what's your show about?
So we have a podcast called Small Town Wealth, and it's between it's a 3-way partnership. It started with 5 guys. It was really the product of me and my business partner David Scarlatescu. I do want to shout him out on the show because I think you should have him as a podcast guest. Yeah, he is from Vernon, but he's active in Kelowna as well and believes in the Okanagan side of things. He's been my business partner. He was recognized, I think it was last year. What year are we in here? Yeah, it was last year. So he bought a restaurant at age 19. Wow. Saved up his pennies and bought a restaurant for his mom.
Amazing.
It was like a multi-year realization of a goal.
How old is he?
He's 20 years old now.
20 years old. So
yeah.
How's the restaurant going?
It's going great. He's increased sales almost, I think he's increased it over 100%.
Amazing.
Sales month over month. Like he's doing amazing things because he's a social media guy.
Right.
He's a social media guru. He loves to know where the engagement is. He's not a salesy dude, but he really likes to create stories, and he really helps people in the community. He's active in Vernon and community forums where some families are asking for help at Christmas time, and he invites them to come into the restaurant and eat for free. Little things like that makes him a very valuable friend to me and also a very valuable community member. We all have things to learn. I'm only 25 as well, and he's 20. So, yeah, we are on the early end of our business careers, but we do know the impact that we can have. And so we had both been thinking about podcasting without each other, just brainstorming. I always wanted to be in a communication medium such as this, and he actually sat me down. He took the action. I don't give myself credit for it. He's the one who sat me down, and our first lunch together, he went, we should start a podcast. And so I was like, okay, 10 minutes. Like, tell me why. Like, where do you see this going? Like, what are the benefits for the community, and what are the benefits for us? How can we use this to leverage our own businesses? And so gave him 10 minutes. We talked about it, and I was like, before the end of the meeting, it was an hour-long meeting. We were like, let's do it. Right. Doesn't matter how long it takes, how much effort it is, let's just do it. We both have, my evenings sometimes are super busy. Sometimes they're not, though. In the wintertime, I get slower. Yeah. So it took us about 3 months of hard work to get things going. We're more on the long form side, so we do interviews that are every time more than an hour, but some of ours span to 2.5 hours. Wow. So we're more long form. We go into the guests' past, as well as what they're doing to today. We want to reverse engineer who they were when they were a kid, because our motto is connecting small town communities to big city ideas.
Nice.
I think cities like Vernon and even Kelowna, to a certain extent, they get lost in the race of, okay, it's Vancouver, Calgary, or Edmonton, or if you're in Western Canada, okay, well, but what about Kelowna? Right. What about these communities in there? And there's a lot of really spectacular people from here and in Vernon and in the Okanagan in general. So we wanted to show that you can come from a small city and do some amazingly big things. And I moved away from the city because I was an angsty teenager, right. And I was like, I got to get out of my parents' house and I got to go to the big city where people actually are doing big things and this and that. I don't want people to have that perspective. I don't want teenagers to think that they can't stay here, because if we want to build the community that we want to see, we have to be part of it. Yeah. You can't move down to Vancouver and then just wait for it to get better. I truly believe you need to be inclusive in that vision. Yeah. So we have guests along any range of the spectrum, mainly business related, because we want to motivate people that you don't just have to go and get a degree and go into a chosen field and work 40 years and retire. We want to show them there's another way. So we both have entrepreneurial spirits and we want to show people. And the reason why we do it long form and include the backstory is because, man, I started out I never thought I would be where I am in 5 years. Right. Or even, I graduated, I think, 8 years ago, and I never could have pictured myself here. Never. I just, you can't put the pieces of the puzzle together before you've actually taken your first step. And so I just want to show people that, look, all of these guests that we've had on, as brilliant as they are, they all came from where you came from. And no, they didn't experience the same things as you. They didn't grow up in the same household. They maybe didn't experience going into even deeper psychological levels. Maybe they didn't experience the hardships that you did that makes you distrust a life of business or an entrepreneur. Yeah. But they started off without a good bank account. They started off without the ability to take out loans and start businesses. They started off without the network that they have now. It all has to start somewhere. And right. I think that if we can act as the community's first step for all the young people, as well as give older people someone to connect with. It's been an amazing networking tool. I'm sure you find that too. Yes. We're only 15 episodes deep right now, and it's amazing the kind of connections that I've made. It's
amazing. Had some amazing conversations and connections, and you learn stories about people. So I've interviewed people that I've known for 5 years, and I've learned things, and it's awesome.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of overlap, I think, in our motivation for this. So for me, it's really helping people to know so many amazing people that live in our city, mid-sized city.
Absolutely.
There's just hundreds and hundreds of fascinating people, and some have more interesting stories than others, but they've all come from someplace, right? And
absolutely,
they're doing really amazing things, the people that I have on the show. So it's always great to hear those stories. So how do you find your guests? Do you have a process, or is it kind of random right now?
No, we do have a process. Right now, you'll find that we've been a lot less active the last 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And the reason is we are actually ramping up with a creative agency in town, a multifaceted digital marketing agency, to actually run a podcasting division for them. So we would still have our podcast, but I don't know if there's anybody in the Okanagan that actually has a division where you can go and you can start a podcast. Because for me and you, we had to go on YouTube videos and we had to figure it out. That's why it took us 3 or 4 months maybe to figure it out. And obviously certain podcasts are going to start a little bit easier. You can start a podcast with your phone microphone and throw it on. You can still get distribution on iTunes and whatnot just with a simple phone mic. So a podcast can be super informal or it can be more formal, and we are looking to build up to the more formal level. So we have an audio engineer on our team who is trained at the Art Institute of Vancouver to make sure that we get the back end done, and that's just less that I have to do. I have some audio experience from producing music in the past, but it's basic and it's not something that I want to spend my time on. So that's why we built it up that way. So it's a 3-way partnership with me and David. And what we're doing now is we're working with this agency, and we want their clients to come to us, and they almost package in podcasting as value-added marketing. So we have a startup cost. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars because we run on billable hours. So it's going to take approximately this. And then we have a continuing fee. If they want weekly, it's not going to cost as much as, or it's going to cost more than monthly. So we determine a frequency, we help them forge a mission statement, vision, and we help them, the ad agency that we're working with, or the digital marketing agency we're working with, they can handle the logo side, the social media side, because they already have that stuff in-house.
So let me just be clear here. So the marketing company will take on a client and they'll say, look, we want some Instagram ads, we want some Facebook ads, maybe some print ads or whatever. And we'd like to add a podcast component to it. And then you guys are going to go in and interview them and either do a monthly or weekly feature about their business.
No, they're actually going to start a podcast. So we help them develop an entire podcast, and then we just help them run it. So sometimes people don't want to be the host. Well, we can provide hosting services for you. So we're helping them forge the entire vision. So for us, what took 3 or 4 months, we can do in 2 or 3 weeks with them.
Right.
And it starts from initial orientation to a follow-up to actually forge your vision. And then during all of that 2-week period, you're getting to know what the mics look like, you're getting to know your environment, so you're already comfortable. Our audio engineer teaches you how to properly speak into the mic so that we get the best product out. We want everything thought out so that it's easy. So we don't have those prices finalized yet. We're just in the opening stages, but it's remarkable because
it's a great concept.
It's really fun and it's really cool. And again, we didn't see this coming. What happened was we had interviewed someone and they were in this agency, and then they called us and said, hey, one of our pretty large clients wants to start a podcast. And they asked, hey guys, do you do podcasting? And they went, no, but we know someone who does. And so like we're almost seen as experts in the field, which is really crazy. Because
crazy to think about where you were even a year ago.
Exactly. Right? It's fast. It's amazing. And you know what, like, I don't consider myself an expert, but I do have a pretty large base of knowledge that I know I can help someone forge a really cool vision and help them in their value-added marketing. So it's really cool to be like, wow, I get to grow with people and I get to grow their business and I get to help grow my own. The way our podcast is set up, nobody can compete with us. Nobody has the same vision as us, and we want to create that for somebody else. So if you're a restaurant owner and say another one of their clients is another restaurant, maybe they're good friends and they want to do a podcast together to promote both of their restaurants. So this can go on so many different levels.
Yes.
And so we've got 3 or 4 different parties that do actively want to start one. So we're just trying to figure out all the mechanics behind it, making sure that we have a professional product, because it's very important to us that we are on the same standard level as this agency that's worked so hard for the reputation that they have.
Of course.
So it's important that we are seen as professionals and that we give out a good product that when they're paying that startup fee, it's not cheap, but there's a reason why, because it is a lot of hours of time and a lot of hours of work. Well, we're going to keep that simple for you. So you don't have to spend over 100 hours just to get it started like we did.
Right.
We can. You might have to spend 10, 15 hours of conceptual stuff, and we give you guidance, and you can go and research this, and you can tell us who your market is and where your audience is and what demographic they're in, and then we can dial it in from there for you.
Very cool.
So it's creating a podcast that they don't have to do as much of the back end, and it's just done for them, and it's a marketing cost attached to what they're already doing.
Very nice.
So, it's very interesting. It's really cool.
I want to pick your brain a little bit about distribution. So if a company approaches you, they want you to help them get totally set up with a new podcast. Let's say they've got a chef or somebody who's good on the mic, and he's going to host it.
Yeah.
Once it's recorded and produced and everything, it's only as useful as how many people listen to it, right?
Absolutely.
Or the right people listen to it.
Absolutely.
You've got the key players or customers or whoever your target audience is can actually be notified and pick it up and start listening to it.
Absolutely.
So how do you get listeners? How do you do that? I know it's a huge question, but
But it's a great question.
How do you
and it's an important question, because without the distribution side, what's the point?
Right.
And that's the thing. Why is somebody going to want to pay X amount of dollars to start a podcast, sign a 6-month commitment or a one year commitment to something that they don't know for sure is going to be value add? Right. So everyone just wants to know that those ad dollars, even if they're not selling something with like a landing page or something, that it is value added marketing.
Right.
So for us, we need to get that podcast into their channels. So whatever channel that they're working with, we want to know where they are. So we're going to throw it up onto their restaurant's Facebook. We're going to throw it onto their restaurant's Instagram. We're going to figure out with them, we're going to do a UYA, understanding your audience. Like, where is your audience? And we figure out where that is. We can do targeted Facebook, targeted Instagram, perhaps using sites like Castanet, things like that, where maybe their listener base and their audience is in maybe the demographic that goes more on Castanet, whereas someone 19 to 29 is not going to be in the same one. Right. So we got to figure out where that is, and that's where working with someone like the folks that we're working with, they've already dialed that in. That's their bread and butter. And my partner David is a lot more skilled on the social media side and the audience integration side. You can go to his restaurant is called the Fig Bistro. Okay. So you can go to his social media and you can see what he's doing there.
Okay.
It's very important to him. But then again, he runs a busy restaurant, a booming restaurant. It was already had an amazing reputation before. He's just elevated everything from the logo to the experience to how quick you get your food to takeout orders to everything. So he's trying to reverse engineer the entire process.
That's awesome.
And so we want to use our strengths to make it easier for someone else, while still nurturing our baby. We're still very focused on small town wealth. It's just right now we have this larger vision to help others in the community develop their visions, and we're totally okay with our podcast taking a back seat for maybe 5-6 months, so that we can really help others, because that was the goal of our podcast. It wasn't to make money. It was to help others in the community and help them show that, like, look, man, I'm 25. This guy's 20. We both didn't have easy lives, and we both struggle, and we're both just like you in some way or another. We want to show you that this is possible for you, and that's where we're at. We just want to help people. We know that will realize its benefit in business later on, but I don't need the fruits of my labor to appear before 30. That's not what it's about. It's about the fruits of my labor coming out later and forming those connections that impact my life too. Yeah. Some of the conversations I've had, I don't know about you, but sometimes you're interviewing people and you get these flashes of greatness and beauty, and you're just like, wow.
And insight too.
Yeah.
Insight, like, I'm going to just shift this in my own business.
Exactly.
Because you're learning from other people.
I take notes, and I make sure that I take as much out of it as I can. And another thing that we're big on too, that we have yet to optimize, but we have done it before and it works really well, is you can use podcast and the transcript from that podcast, and you can do social media marketing on top of that. So you can take a picture, if you have a video and you take a picture of the person talking, say, it's like this, and then you can take that picture and then there's a caption on it, and then you tag it on Instagram with as many hashtags as they'll allow you to do with the subject matter, and you're driving traffic from Instagram that a lot of locals are looking at, whether some of the older folks that aren't on social media will agree with or not. We're driving traffic to those channels. So I find podcasting fascinating because it's a really good way to extrapolate value in ways that you wouldn't think. It's not just about going on the mic and telling your story and hoping that people buy into it and maybe drive some traffic to your website or your services or whatever it is. It's about forming a deeper relationship and also using that to your benefit by using those marketing materials. There's so much value you can extrapolate from these things that I think that's why podcasting is such a growing medium, and it's not growing at explosive rates. It's not like, what can you liken it to? A certain social media platforms, they explode, like Vine is one of them.
When it first started, and Instagram, when Facebook bought it, it exploded. Facebook exploded. So a lot of these platforms, they explode at the outset.
Yeah.
Podcasting had an initial burst, I think it was 2005.
Yeah.
or 2006 when Steve Jobs announced it. He talked about podcasting. And it had an initial burst. And there are some producers that have been going since the beginning, like National Public Radio, for example.
Yeah, and that's podcasting on a different level, right?
Yeah, they've got 1 million downloads an episode or something. They do like 5 days a week.
Yep.
You know? So,
well, you look at Joe Rogan podcast. He's one of the longer standing. He's always in the top 5 of top podcasts. After the big UFC fight this past weekend, regardless of the politics that happened in that fight, he had one of the coaches of one of the fighters on his podcast the next day to talk about it. And everyone was really excited to see what the losing fighter's coach was going to say. He got over 1 million downloads within a couple days, and he has over 3 million users on his... or subscribers on YouTube.
That's amazing.
That's unbelievable numbers. But podcasting in general, I don't know if I'm sure you know this as well, but podcasting it had its initial burst, but then it's steady growth. It's about 20% per year in both listenership, download rates, and just how many podcasts are being started. Because as soon as something gets crowded, you have to find a way to stand in.
Now, one of the things I want to tell you, hopefully it inspires you.
Yeah,
the average podcast quits after 9 episodes.
I was just going to say
it's 11.
It's super cool, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is there's so many startup podcasts, and people say, well, I've got, 15 downloads. It's my cousin, some guy in the corner eating a ham sandwich. Like, I'm not really getting any traction.
Yeah.
And then people quit. And my advice to you and to anybody is don't quit, because it's such a valuable platform. People, there's too many distractions driving.
There is.
People, checking their social media while they're driving. I see people, at red lights and stuff.
Yep.
Right. And to be honest, before I shut off notifications, if I see one come up, I'm tempted, right, to look at it. So I shut it all off. If you're on the treadmill or if you're going for a walk.
Awesome times, right? For sure.
You need audio because video is just not appropriate.
Yeah.
Right? It's easier to produce, right? You don't really have to worry so much how you look necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, we still try to, be presentable or professional. But there's less of I think people are a little more comfortable just having a conversation than worrying about cameras,
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of reasons why it's a great platform. Really great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's just it. All the stuff that you can take out of it is amazing. Like the juice from those fruits is amazing. Mm-hmm. I love the ability to be an interviewer, and I really respect the way that you interview too, because you allow guests to come on, and instead of shifting the worry to them, they know that they can rely on you to keep the conversation going. Right. And that's what's so amazing about it. Most of our guests that we've had in, they're a little nervous, especially I had my team leader on there as well, and he's mid-40s, and he's just not as comfortable on the video side. It's just not the world that he grew up in, right? So that was just totally foreign to him. And then I basically sprung it on him that morning that he's going to be live streaming on Facebook and Instagram. So we have a tripod set up just with our phones. We're trying to improve on this as well, but we have a tripod with a external charger that makes sure our phones stay charged during these feeds, and then we can put David's phone, my phone, and then we live stream off Facebook and Instagram. So we told him that when he walked in. And so it put him on the spot, but that's sometimes what friends do for each other.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, he got the confidence to go and do videos of his own. And it's amazing the type of videos that he's doing. He's doing these 24/7 open houses. So they go in and they actually show you through the house. And it's like a 2 or 3 minute video that gives you every corner of the house and maybe what the realtor likes about it and things that you might not have known about it. And that's amazing to see that, to see what that is. And I tell all my guests, don't worry about keeping the conversation moving. Yeah. I don't want you to be worried the night before what you're going to say and how am I going to say that? Because the more you pre-plan a conversation, the more off track it actually gets. It's been shown that the more, say you go into a job interview and the more you recite in your head, okay, when they ask me this, I'm going to say this.
Yes.
The worse your interview actually goes. Yeah. Because you do need to rely on who you are. You need to rely on your personality. And we want to see those personalities come out. We want to see them blossom. So I always just tell them, it's up to us. Don't worry about trailing off and not saying anything, because it's now up to us to keep that conversation moving, to maybe shift the gears or keep the emotion going, maybe deepen the emotion. The question types are really important too. Don't ask questions or try not to that you can only get a yes or no answer from. Do who, what, when, and where, who, what, where, when, why, so that it's open-ended and you can really dig down into those deeper emotions. That's what it's all about. And then we garner trust in terms of the public. So
true.
Super cool.
So true. Well, Shelby, I'm super glad that you came down here.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You gave me some great ideas for my own show.
Yeah.
Which is great. And you brought me a bottle of scotch, which makes you an instant friend of mine. That was really classy to do. And I appreciate you driving down here. It is a beautiful day for a drive, but I appreciate your time and taking the time to actually come down here.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
So we're going to post links to your social media.
Thank you.
And to all the people that you mentioned in the show. And if you've got a platform or a website or anything to do with your podcasting consulting, if I can call it that, we're going to link to that as well. And I'm definitely taking inspiration from you. So thank you.
Well, thanks for saying that, man. I really appreciate it. And thank you for giving me a platform. The gift was personal. I know you like whiskey, and I just wanted to show that I really appreciate you having me on your platform and giving me a voice. I want to have a voice in the community, and I love what you're doing. I love the consistency aspect of it. We're all improving together, and you give me inspiration as well. So we're both on each other's team there, and if you ever need anything from me, just ask me. I'm always available there for you and for your listeners as well. So we can grow together, right?
Awesome.
I'm from Vernon, you're from Kelowna. Let's do it together.
To drive up there. And
please, yeah, we'll have you on there for sure, man. For sure. That would be awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011. And he always says, yeah, one regret. And that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent, and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time, 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.